All right. My name is Dave, and Dallas said, introduce yourself. So I'm going to introduce myself. I'm Dave. All right. And I live very close to here. I live in Reedley, which is just off the mountain. Maybe you've been to Reedley Starbucks. It's one of the closest Starbucks to you. And I am CEO of Students International, and our international office is in Visalia. That's very random because we have students come with us, like you, from all over the United States. We have a gap year program, very similar to you guys, that's in a camp called Camp of the Woods in upstate New York, and it's called LIFT. We call it Joshua plus 4 because their average age is 22, 23, and they're kind of doing a gap year program after like college before they begin their careers. And they go to Guatemala, you guys go to Dominican Republic. So I'm here to talk to you a little bit about what is going to happen when you guys go to the DR. And we're going to talk a little bit about lots of stuff, okay? So I really, it's congratulations to Haley for getting proposed to by a fine young man, I'm sure. And I used to teach high school seniors, and I would tell the girls, I'd say, you know, there's 4 times as many widows as widowers in this country. I'm really trying to be serious. There's 4 times as many widows as widowers. So the average woman lives 4 years longer. So really, girls, if you found a guy 4 years younger, your lifespan would be equal. So when Dallas said, is he worth waiting for? Did he have snot coming out his nose? Oh, okay. Well, he's just he's a freshman, you know. Freshmen grow up. My wife waited for me to grow up. She's still kind of waiting. But she was out of my league, so much out of my league, till my senior year she gave a little shot, you know, and senior year of high school. Then we dated in college and got married after college. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself tonight, and then I'm going to tell you about Students International, and then we're going to talk about the poor in the world. Okay? That's going to be tonight. Tomorrow night, I'm going to tell you how to pack. Oh, good, because you wanted to know how to pack. I'm going to tell you how to pack physically. I'm also going to tell you how to pack spiritually. Okay? Sound good, Alex?
Sounds good.
Okay, all right. And Wednesday night, I'm going to talk about just kind of take a heart check, where you guys are with your heart. We'll just do a little checkup on the heart, okay? Like doctors do. Listen to the heart. We're going to do a little heart check. And then Thursday morning, I'll wrap it up. Okay, so that's kind of where we're headed. All right? I am staying right in the speaker palace right over there. That's awesome. I love it, actually. I love it. And I'll be eating meals with you guys. So I'd love to catch time with as many of you as I possibly could. So just grab me, set up a time, or just come sit down where I'm sitting, and love to get to know you and hear your stories. Okay? So a little bit about myself. I was raised an only child, except for my 3 older sisters. And are there any guys in this room that have older sisters with no brothers? You're, okay. Older sister, how many? Just one. Dean? One. Okay. Oh, man, nobody had to endure 3. Bless you guys for having 1. I had 3, and they all were like 1 year apart, and there was a 4-year gap before I came along. So, whoa, baby. Oh, okay, no problem. And so, so when I was growing up, there was always older girls running around my house, and all their friends were over, and I just kind of had this deal. And back then, boys, just didn't like girls, pretty much. And so I told my sisters, I actually used the word, I shouldn't have used it, but I used the word hate. I hate girls. First grade, I hate girls. And they made me, they didn't make me, they said, well, then who are you going to get married to? I said, oh, my best friend, Craig Baker. Well, that's all I could think about. Spend the rest of my life with my best friend, Craig Baker. Which, ironically, Craig Baker is still my best friend, and we married sisters. Yeah. That's weird, isn't it? Yeah. So I'm not done with the story. Just wait. So anyway, Craig Baker, he was a great guy, and I didn't like girls. So this is a true story. My first grade, I got in trouble a lot when I was younger. I talked a lot. And so the teacher says, Dave, go to the back of the room and sit there. There's 2 people would share a desk, okay? And I had to sit by the new person. It would have been okay if it was a guy, but it was a girl. And so if you can remember anything about first grade, there's this theories of cooties, right? And so I was definitely in the cootie range, and the cooties were just leaping on me from this girl. And so when the bell rang, recess, I went outside, and all my friends ran away because they're going, cooties, David got cooties. And I had to wait for the cootie quarantine for them to die, right? We had it all figured out. We were smart. God has such an incredible sense of humor because I will celebrate my 48th anniversary with the cootie girl. Yeah, we got married. Isn't that strange? Yeah, that's a true story. And I love her more today than I did when I got married. When we got married, we're young, we're 21 years old, and man, we were so in love, we thought. But then love grows over time. And that's what I hope for all of you, that you find the love of your life and the love grows. And the other day I was talking to her, and I said, Janice, you remember when we were young and we said, we're 20, 21 years old, let's just get married, let's just grow old together. It sounds so romantic. Let's just grow old together. And she goes, yeah. And I said, we kind of did, didn't we? And she goes, yeah, but it's great. And she would love to be here, but we had 4 kids, and those 4 kids had kids, and now she is a grandma, and there's 8 grandkids that live right around. And as you probably can relate, some of you, to this, that she helps out the grandkids a lot. And I have 10 grandkids, 8 that live right close by, and 2 that live in Minnesota. And they range from 3rd grade to the oldest one is your age. She's 18. And she took a gap year, but her gap year is a little different than here. She is just living in Guatemala and working in our Guatemala ministry site, becoming fluent in Spanish, and taking a year before she goes off to college. So anyway, that's a little bit about my story. Some of my passions, interests, the best decision I ever made was following Jesus. I'm sure most of you would say the same thing. Making a decision to go all in with him. I love spending time with my family. My family, spending time with my kids and grandkids and my wife. Best times for me. I love missions. I love seeing eyes opened up to new worlds. I love, like you guys are going to see a bigger God. You're going to see a bigger world. And I really love that. I also have a strange, kind of random passions, but I really love football. I love football. And I coached high school football for 25 years. And then I coached college football for 5 years before I took this job. And that was 18 years ago I took this role with Students International. And I also love entrepreneurial. My major in college was Bible and business, because my dad said, don't just do Bible. You need something that's also going to get a job, because just a Bible degree is kind of tough to get a job with just that. So I was Bible and business, and so I kind of have these different passions. So my life took a change when I've done different things in the past, from flipping homes to being a youth pastor to teaching at a Christian high school and coaching football in Europe, in Austria and Ukraine, and being on Young Life staff for about a decade. So back when I was in my 20s, I also loved to snow ski. And when I was a youth pastor, I would take my students in my youth group snow skiing every Easter break. That's just kind of what we did. And so I got a job at a church, and the senior pastor says, Dave, I want you to take a mission trip to Mexico. I went, well, you know what? I really, respectfully, I really would like to take, students skiing to Mammoth, my favorite place to ski. And he goes, respectfully, you're going to do a mission trip. I said, okay, I'll do a mission trip. So I took our youth group, about 35 of us, down to Mexico, along with my family, and my kids were 2, 4, 6, and 8. Okay? Who do we appreciate? 2, 4, 6, 8. And I didn't speak any Spanish. I could say hola and uno, dos, tres, and that's about it. You guys are more bilingual than I was. And I was the leader of the trip, right? But I had a couple people that were bilingual on that trip. I think I mentioned Ernesto. He speaks Spanish. Anybody else in here speak Spanish? Anybody had 4 years of high school Spanish? And yeah, 4 years. Are you ready to speak fluently? Okay, good. You'll get lots of practice in the DR. I went on this trip, and a really different kind of it was a new experience for me to see these eyes open up with the students that I took to Mexico. After having them in Bible study or in a Bible class or in Sunday school for a whole year, I think they grew more in 5 days in Mexico than they did the whole time there in Sunday school or at youth group, right? And then for my own kids, they had a great time. The little 2-year-old had that, like the guy you're waiting for, he had the snot coming out his nose the whole time. Sorry, Haley, I won't say it again. Don't want to embarrass you. No, but my little 2-year-old had snot, and he had dirt on his face, and he's playing out in the street, and my 4-year-old son and my 6-year-old son are learning how to play marbles, and they keep coming back to me to get more marbles because the little boys in Mexico are so good that they would clean their clock and they keep the marbles in real marbles, right? But my 8-year-old daughter listened to all the stories because they're in English and Spanish. And when at the end of the week, she got up and went forward to give her life to Jesus. And I'm thinking, my gosh, I just got introduced to cross-cultural encounter. I got introduced to a bigger God. I guess that's probably the best way to say it. And so for me, I was very much interested in doing it again. Didn't do any more spring break ski trips. I just did mission trips for many years, okay? How many of you have been on one of those, like I just described? Short-term trip, okay? All right. What's a positive takeaway? Some of you that just raised your hand. What did you learn on a trip? Or what's a positive that you took away? Anybody? Yeah?
I actually went to the Guatemala SI site.
You did?
Yeah, and I feel like everything I learned was positive. Like the variety of Christians that are out there, not just like in America, and the way that they pray all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Just like the devotion.
Okay. So you saw a passion.
Yeah, passion.
That was incredible. Okay? I see that. I see that as well. What church did you go with?
I went with a school.
Which one?
Ripon Christian.
Oh, Ripon, of course. Yeah, I've been there multiple times. Yeah, to recruit your leaders, to get them ready to go. Okay? Anybody else? Any other positive? Yeah?
It's fun seeing the different cultures.
Okay? Interesting seeing another culture. All right? Okay. All right. So what happened on these trips was we'd go to Mexico, we would build a home, we would do vacation Bible school, we built all these relationships, and when we got ready to leave, we would all hold hands and pray to dedicate the house that we built to the Lord and to the family we gave it to. And we prayed to dedicate those children that gave their lives to Jesus. And the high school girls that I took are crying. And we get in the car to come back up I-5, and they say, oh man, I just want to live in Mexico the rest of my life, because they've been there 5 days and they really know what that would be like, right? And so I'm going, man, that was an amazing trip, great trip. And then my wife, after about 10 years of this, my wife said, do you think we did any damage? I went, damage? Why, what damage did we do? They said it was their best week of their life. And she goes, well, yeah, we brought in 7 vans with students. We brought in 2 trailers of stuff. We gave food away. We gave clothes away. We built a house, everything, right? Of course it was their best week. But what did we do in the culture? What did we do to the culture? And so now I'm going to ask you the opposite question I asked you a minute ago. What damage could a short-term trip do? What could possibly do? Yeah, Ernesto.
Well, if you go and you tell them about Jesus and they hear about it, they're excited about it, but then you leave short after, they don't have a community or a place where they can be discipled.
It's a great point, and that's what I was doing. I was doing that because I made these friends in this very poor village. We stayed down there with them. We witnessed to them. And then when I'd leave, they said, oh, we're going to disciple those 15 new believers. And we're going to build houses because you've inspired us. Then I'd come back the next year with a new group of people. And nothing had taken place. There was no discipleship. They didn't build any houses. And all they wanted to do is ask me, ¿Dónde está Michelle? You know, because maybe some little girl had a really good friendship with Michelle, but I'm taking a new group of students. You know, it was really kind of a shot. It was like a shot in the dark for them. It was a good week because we gave all this stuff away. But it's not always good to give things away, right? Oh, I'm giving an answer. All right, another observation. What could possibly go wrong on a short-term trip? I just gave a clue. Giving things away. What happens when you give things away? Yeah.
Creates like a culture of dependency.
Creates a culture of dependency, and it takes away their dignity. It's not good. So in Students International, we have a culture of not giving things away. If somebody gives me a bag of clothes and I take them to Guatemala, in Guatemala, we'll sell them. We'll sell the clothes to the poor, to very, very poor people. But we'll sell them for just a little bit. But then they bought it. Then they're not getting a free handout. They have dignity. A friend of mine has a church in Visalia. Every year they do this. They used to do this huge toy drive, and they would get like thousands and thousands of dollars worth of toys. And then they'd get kids to come in and get toys at Christmas and all that. Then they got smart. And they thought, you know what? That's giving us the credit, the church. We should give the parents the credit. So let's do a toy store where the church donates, $10,000 worth of toys. Then they invite the parents of these poor neighborhoods in, and 10 cents on the dollar, they sell the toys. Then the parents wrap them up, and the parents give them at Christmas. Isn't that so much smarter? It's building dignity. It's not, it doesn't make the parents feel bad because they can't afford it, but the church does it. No, it's building respect, okay? Also, if you get something for free, you don't appreciate it, right? So with that being said, I'm taking you a little bit on a timeline of my learning curve, all right? So I was doing a lot of trips. I did trips with Young Life. I did trips in a church. I did trips out of a Christian high school. And then along came a guy who said to me, he was the founder of Students International, who's since in heaven. But he was the founder. His name was Chuck. He said, hey, Dave, have you ever thought of doing a mission trip differently? I went, like what? He says, Well, when you go on a trip, he nailed exactly what we do. He says, when you go on a trip, you're probably building something, or you're doing like a VBS, Vacation Bible School, right, with little kids. I said, yeah, pretty much, sometimes both on the same trip. He said, well, Students International is different. Students International is more along the lines of trying to get people in an area of their interest or an area of their passion. He says some people in your youth group, they love sports. Why not let them use sports as an outreach tool? Others might want to go into medicine and be a doctor or a nurse. They could work with a doctor. Others might have interest in physical therapy. They work in a physical therapy clinic. And others might be interested in entrepreneurial things, like I was with my business major, and they can work in microfinance. And I said, how in the world do you do that on a short-term trip? Because what he was describing was a whole lot of staff down in Guatemala was where I first went. Whole lot of staff. He said, well, we have a full-time staff in every one of those areas I just mentioned. So you all are going to different areas, very different areas. Some of you, do you have your assignments yet? Yeah. Okay. Those of you that are going to work in microfinance, okay, just you? Who else?
Another girl.
Oh, another one too. Okay. You will be working with women and making loans like a bank, while somebody else working in medicine, who's working in medicine with the doctor. Okay? All right? You guys are going to put on scrubs and be learning how to take vital signs and speaking fluent Spanish. Maybe. Yeah, right. And others are going to work in physical therapy. And others are going to work in sports. Anybody doing volleyball? Any girls doing volleyball? All right. How about boys baseball? All right. And you all are going to be doing really uniquely different things. Okay? But you're going to come back together in the evenings and share what you've learned together. So I got a 3-minute video, if it's around. I could show it to you. That's a little glimpse of our ministry. It's sort of made for people who might be interested in bringing a team. So I got to kind of warn you. Yeah, that's it. Whoops. Hey. Good job, Isaiah.
What if students on a short-term trip could work alongside full-time missionaries and build eternal community? Hi, my name is Dave Hansen, and I'm CEO of Students International. Our vision is to see both the students on the short-term trip and the people of the community transform into the likeness of Christ and to discover what God has called them to do. We do this through long-term, ongoing community development in Costa Rica, Guatemala, Nicaragua, and the Dominican Republic, get dozens of ministry sites staffed by our full-time missionaries and the short-term participants that come with us throughout the year.
As a group leader, one of the things that really stands out to me about Students International is just how intentional they are, from the ministry they do down to the details of getting our groups down there. They take care of all the details. So for me, I'm able to bring my group and not worry about it and get to be a part of the ministry that happens and watch my students' lives be changed.
They just really changed my life, and last time I was here, God showed me that He wants to use me in special needs, so I'm in school right now to become a special needs teacher.
I think the thing that impacted me most would be the relationships that I've felt with like my leaders and the people just in our site in general. I've gotten to hear so many, just testimonies of people where they have seen God just revolutionize and change their life.
I am so excited about Students International, and I would like to invite you to bring a team.
Okay, thanks. Okay, do you guys know, are you guys whitewater rafting? See, I like that. Good. Well, one thing I learned in the whitewater rafting trip is that I used to take a lot of teams to Costa Rica, where there's a river called the Pequari, and it's got these fours in it that are really wild and crazy. And my wife and I love adrenaline. We're opposites. I love adrenaline. I love to get scared. And she hates it. She loves Hume Lake, but driving around those cliffs scare her to death. So that's just kind of how we're wired different. So when my first time I went in the DR on the river, it was cool. It was a lot of good rapids. There's a good one at the end called Mike Tyson that can dump you, and it was really fun, but it wasn't as wild as Costa Rica. So I talked Janice into going. When she had a chance, she came down with me. I said, it's not as bad as, because she doesn't even love whitewater rafting. I said, just come on with us. It's not as bad as Pequari. So she comes with us, and unbeknownst to me, this river is really dependent on how much rain it gets. And it had rained like for 2 days prior to me taking her on this trip. And I didn't know this. But when I get there, I know something's up because the guy's giving us a talk. And he is intense. And he says, this river today it's really rough. In fact, we can't even put in where we normally put in. We got to put in a kilometer downstream. And he goes, when it gets really bad, and you'll get these instructions. He said, I'm going to yell out, oh, and he says the word S-H-I-T, and you just, I think we've got him to not say that anymore, but that's what he said at the time. Just dive into the middle of the raft, because otherwise we're going to flip. And I'm like, oh man, I shouldn't have brought Janice, and Janice's eyes are like this. We put the raft in the water. It isn't 10 seconds. And he goes, oh, and he says that. And we dive in there, and it was more wild than Costa Rica. It was crazy. Fours, multiple fours. So I don't know what you're going to get. You could get a nice little, just gentle one. I'd say intermediate, or you could get a wild one. Did that make you pumped?
Heck yeah.
Unless you're wired like my wife, and then you're like going, oh, I don't know anymore if I'm going to do that. Okay, so let me tell you, let me put a bow on the idea of how we do missions differently. Because if you go on our website, you're going to see do missions differently. Most short-term missions is the way I used to do them. That's probably over 90% of that. But our missions is very different because you're going to be working with a staff person that lives there. That was one of the things I think Ernesto said, where it's different if you're just coming and going. you're not really leaving a long-term impact. It might be a good trip for the team that goes on one of those trips because you got out of your element, you had some walls that maybe got broken down through cross-cultural exposure. You got stretched. You worked with kids that are from very poor families. But what kind of impact is left when you leave? With Students International, there's going to be a person there that your 2 weeks there is just a part of a whole year of ministry. They're there to stay. We have North Americans and we have Dominicans that you'll be working with. Some of you will be working with North Americans that are just a little bit older than you. And they've said, we're going to give 3 years of our time, a season in our life. I suspect 1 or 2 of you might be one of those people in a few years. Also, there's going to be, this coming summer, there's summer staff that come in, and we have Joshua students that filter back, that were really touched by the ministry. And you can come back and be on a summer staff. That's basically what my granddaughter's doing now, as like a summer staff. We don't call it summer staff when it's not summer, we call it an internship. That's what she's doing in Guatemala. So we have lots of flexibility to have you come back. And if some of you if you already know right away, man, I am really interested in that, catch me during this week at a meal, and I'd love to tell you more about that, okay? But the way our mission and vision is to bring students and the poor together, cross-culturally, to encounter God, to share the good news, to disciple and serve through occupational ministry sites. That's our mission statement, okay? Bringing students and the poor together to encounter God, share the good news, and serve through occupational ministry sites. Okay, that's what you're up for. It's going to be if you've been on another mission trip, this will probably be a little bit different. But on this trip, you are going to be working, for 2 weeks, you're going to be in a small setting working with the poor. I love the people of Dominican Republic. But our ministry, our mission and vision statement, did you notice it said the poor? We don't say the poor in a derogatory way. We say the poor in a special way. Because God has a special place in his heart for the poor. He really does. He has a special place in his heart for the poor. Let me share with you a couple verses. Luke chapter 6. Jesus, in his Sermon on the Mount, says, "Blessed are you who are poor, for yours is the kingdom of God." James 2:5. Listen to this. "Listen, my dear brothers, has not God chosen those who are poor in the eyes of the world to be rich in faith and to inherit the kingdom he promised those who love him?" You see, in Jesus' kingdom, it's upside down. Have you ever heard of that term, upside down kingdom? Yeah? Jesus' kingdom is upside down. If you want to live, you must die. If you want to be great, you must serve. And in Jesus' upside down kingdom, he elevates the poor. And he says to the rich, be careful. By the way, we're the rich in this room. You're the rich. And I'm the rich. Because of the culture we're from. And he says to us, it's harder for a rich man to get to heaven than a poor man. We have to be very, very careful. Because wealth changes everything. Right? And I know some of you are going, Dave, you don't know me. I'm poor. Man, I'm dirt poor. I'm barely here. And I had people raise money to get me here. True. But when you're done with Joshua, you can go and get a job flipping burgers at In-N-Out and make $20 an hour. Is that what you did? You did that. What'd you make an hour?
20 an hour.
There you go, 20 an hour. And there's a new law in California that all fast foods are going to pay 20 an hour, and then In-N-Out will go up to 23 an hour because, I'm just guessing, because In-N-Out wants the best of the best. It's hard to get a job at In-N-Out, but you guys are all Joshua quality. Could they all get a job at In-N-Out?
Yes.
Okay, good. Good answer. Good answer. Okay. So let me give you a couple quick statistics here. Okay? By the World Bank standards, the poorest of the poor in the world live on $2 a day. What's your name?
I'm Jacob.
Jacob. Jacob's making 20 an hour compared to $2 a whole day. One of the biggest challenges in the world today, and this is a challenge in our country, is the wealth gap. The gap between the richest of the rich in our country and the poorest of the poor in our country. We have poor in our country too. Huge issues with that. You've probably read about that. The good news is that the poorest of the poor, there's not getting more of them. We're making progress through things like microfinance. That's helping. Our microfinance in DR helps take people out of the poorest situations where they have chains of cycles of poverty that they're caught in, and it helps break the cycle of poverty. So I once heard a guy say, his name was Tony Campolo, and this was about 30 years ago, a long time ago. And it was a watershed moment for me. I had 4 little kids. My wife and I went to hear Tony Campolo speak in Fresno. And he got up in a stadium with 2,000 people there. And he said these words. He said, tonight, 25,000 children in this world are going to die because of poverty and poverty-related diseases. 25,000. And then he said, and you all out there, you don't give a, he said S-H-I-T. And he said it with punch. And then he just paused for effect. And then he said, and the worst thing is, you're all more concerned that I said that word in here than 25,000 kids are going to die tonight. And he had me. He put the knife in, and then he twisted it. Because I'm thinking, he just said S-H-I-T in this conservative 2,000 Christians and all these churches get together to hear him. He never got asked back to speak. Never got asked back to speak. Mennonites. We're talking about Mennonite. Because I go to a Mennonite church, and he never got asked back to speak. And now I hear that recently he was saying the same line, but using the F word. Again, for emphasis, to shock Christians into saying, do you really care that 25,000 people died? Okay, the good news is, if there's good news in that, today it's about 15,000. So it's a lot better than 30 years ago. And 30 years ago, there was a larger section of poverty. You know how many people are in the world today? Anybody take a guess? 8 billion. About 8 billion people. And the people who are the poorest of the poor, there's about 700 million of those. But when I was speaking to Joshua students 12 years ago, in this same room, it was over 1 billion. So see, it's getting better. But it's still 700 million. Still 15,000 kids died tonight. Right? And you know what that stat does to us? It's like, I'm with you on this. It's like, okay, I guess I'm supposed to be shocked, but, and that's the deal with statistics, is that you get these big numbers and it doesn't have the power. If it's one person oh my gosh, it's a tragedy, right? Some of you especially will be exposed to poverty, to children that don't get enough nourishment. You will wrestle with that. You will wrestle with, why were you born in the United States? And they're born into poverty in the DR. You ever wonder that? Why were you born where you were born? Those are questions. I'm not here to make you feel guilty. I just want to show you the contrast. The contrast that you and I live, our culture lives on an average of about $100 a day per person. 100. And you're going to be in a culture where some people live on $2 a day. You're also going to see wealth. Because down in the DR, the upper 1% are very wealthy. Some very famous baseball players have second homes in Harabacoa, where you're going. And you'll see poverty, and then you'll see a mansion, side by side. That surprised me when I first went to Mexico and I saw that. Not everyone is poor. So I am not here to lay a guilt trip on you. What I'm here is to pose the question, what does God want you to do with the wealth that you have, with the wealth of opportunity? With, some of you are going to someday be very rich. Others of you are going to go, man, I feel called to go back to the poor. And you might be a missionary in India. You know what some of you that are very rich should be doing? Funding that. You guys are a team right here, right? You're a team. What's the best part of Joshua? It's the community. What's the hardest part of Joshua? The community. But you guys are a team, and I've actually seen that happen, where some of Joshua's students have gone on into occupations that have made great money. Just remember your class, because some are going to choose a route of ministry and maybe to other cultures. Because the Bible calls us to be witnesses for Him in Jerusalem. This is Acts 1:8. Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and the uttermost parts of the earth. Jerusalem is right where you live. That's home. Judea, right now, this is your Judea. You got a big community here. Samaria is maybe other staff that are here at Hume, or maybe when you go back home, it's your community. But the remotest parts of the earth, or the uttermost parts of the earth, that's the uttermost parts of the earth. Some of you are going to be called there. So I want you to listen to the Holy Spirit. Again, don't feel bad that you're born in the United States, but understand that where more has been given, more will be required to be responsible with that. Does that make sense? What could you do in the world? What is God calling you to do? And I like to think of it like this. Draw a big circle up here and say, all right, these are the things I like to do. These, man, I really, if I could get a job doing something like this, it wouldn't even feel like work. That's what my dad told me. Get a job that you really like and you'll never have to go to work. And I have my whole life. I have loved what I've done. I love it. And I used to think, I'm getting a paycheck for this. I wouldn't tell my boss I'd say that, but I go, man, thank you, Lord. I get a paycheck to do what I'm doing. Okay? So draw a circle up here like that, right? Then over here, draw a circle of the world's needs. What you love to do, the world's needs. Where do they intersect? Maybe that's where God's calling you, right? Maybe that's where God's calling you. You know what God's will is for your life? Your favorite question. What are you going to do after Joshua, right? That's facetiously, I'm saying that. Okay, I'm going to I'm going to give you what you should do after Joshua. Because this is what God has for all of us. Micah 6:8. He has shown you, O man, what is good and what the Lord requires of you. To do justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with God. That's it. Do justice, love mercy, walk humbly. You're going to get a chance to see injustice. Some of you will hear stories of abuse. That's just not fair. That's just not justice. And it's going to make you angry. And maybe God's calling you to fight that, to fight injustice. One of my friends went to work with the International Justice Mission in the Philippines to pull women out of places where they are sex slaves. There's that in the United States as well, breaking the chains. You're going to get a chance to see needs, and you're going to feel like you want to help them. So you do justice, love mercy. You're going to want to give help. Your heart's going to go out. Who's working at the Genesis? Who's working the special needs? Okay, it's called Genesis in English, but it's Genesis in Spanish. New beginnings is what that actually means. So you too. Anybody else in Genesis? Oh, you're in for a great treat because the kids are wonderful and they're so embracing and they have a childlike faith and it's awesome. But you all are going to get a chance to have mercy, to be able to extend mercy. And then ultimately, the third thing is do justice, love mercy, walk humbly with God. That's what you're learning right now on a day-to-day basis here in Joshua. But my prayer for you is that as you go on this trip, that you would pray this prayer, Lord, help me to see what you see. Help me to see where there's needs, I want to see the needs the way you see them. Help me to see people the way you see them. And ultimately, may my heart be broken with the things that break the heart of God. So you can pray, Lord, what breaks your heart, may it break my heart. That's my prayer for you on this trip. I am really excited you're going. And I wish I could go with you. I owe Dallas maybe one more excuse, but he asked me every year to go with you guys, and I think next year I'm going to go, okay? But it took me 5 years asking Dallas to ever go on his first one, so I'm about out of excuses. So I'm not going with you guys, except I'll be praying for you. And the staff are my friends. I know them well. I'm going to DR like a month after you're there, so I'll be there shortly. But I'm not on the same trip as you guys. But I'll be praying for you incredibly. Okay? Let me pray right now. Heavenly Father, I thank you so much for this team and the impact that they will make in the DR. I thank you, Lord, for what they're going to learn, how you will be able to speak to them. I pray that they are all ears for what you have to say to them. I pray that they see you in new places. And Lord, I just pray that this is a trip that will be something they'll look back on and say, wow, that was a trip that I learned about a bigger God and learned about a bigger world. And who knows where that might take me in the future. Lord, thank you for the time we've had here tonight. In Jesus' name, amen.